Today we are supposed to talk about the key aspects of security policies. Now, it's important for us to understand that the security threats are undergoing evolution constantly, and the requirements that are looked at or that determines the compliance are increasing, and also their complexity is also increasing. So organizations, both large and small organizations, must make sure that they develop or they create a security program that is comprehensive to make sure that the program is able to cover the constant changes that are coming um, in the security threats. Uh, if an organization does not have a security policy, then basically it's going to be impossible for that organization to coordinate. It is going to be impossible for that organization to enforce security programs across that organization. It is also going to be impossible to communicate the measures of security to some third parties and external auditors. So there are a few characteristics that make a security policy efficient, and this security policy should cover um, security from end to end in the organization, should be actually be enforced, and it should be practical. The policy should have revisions, it should be updated, and it should be focused on the goals, the business goals of the organization. So what then is the meaning of my internet has an issue? All right. What then is the meaning of information security policy? So information security policy is basically a set of rules that is guiding individuals who are working with information technology assets. So they are basically rules, a group or a set of rules that are serving as guidance to individuals that are operating on or that are working on or that are using information technology assets. So a company can actually create an information security policy to make sure that its employees and the users of the resources of that company are actually following the various protocols and procedures of security that are set. So having an updated and a current security policy is going to make sure that any sensitive information that is in maintenance, that is held by the organization or the company, will only be accessed by people who are authorized to access that information and not to people who are not authorized. So what is the importance of having an information security policy? When you create an effective security policies, and you also ensure that the policy is complying to the regulatory bodies and the national law. This is one step that is very important in preventing security breaches. It's also important in mitigating security breaches. So if you want to make your security policy effective, you have to do the following one. You have to make sure that you update that security policy uh, in response to the changes that your company undertake. You have to update it in response to the new threats that come into existence. Remember, I said that the threats are evolving with time, and that is happening rapidly. You have to update your security policy based on the conclusions that um, they were obtained or they were made from breaches that happened previously, and also you update it based on other changes that are occurring to your security posture or to the posture of your security. So you need to ensure that the policy is practical and is also enforceable. It's something that can be applied and it's something that can be enforced. Again, in place, you make sure you have uh, an exception system that is going to accommodate the requirements and urgencies that might rise from different parts of the organizations. And what then are the elements of okay, if you're not getting me clearly, it means it is an issue with at your end, because I'm checking the network in my end is fine. Yeah. So kindly check. It might be an issue in your end. Yeah, it might be an issue with the Wi-Fi you connected to. So if you're using a wireless Wi-Fi, then check. You can connect to another access point instead. All right then. Let's continue. The elements of information security policy is what we are supposed to discuss. Now, you can have a security policy being broad, uh, based on how you want it. Yeah. You can make it as broad as you want, but there are considerations that are important to look at when you're developing an information security policy. And those considerations include the following. One, the purpose. You have to make sure that you are putting across the purpose of the policy. And the purpose of the policy may be one, maybe you're creating an overall approach to information security. It can be detecting and preempting information security breaches, for example, where data is misused, where networks are misused, and also where applications are misused, computer systems, etc. The purpose could be maintaining the reputation of the organization and also upholding the both ethical and legal responsibilities. The purpose can be something like respecting customer rights, including how you're going to interact to questions or queries from the or inquiries from the customers and their complaints about uh, any non-compliance. Number two, you need to consider the audience. The audience here, that means the people to whom the policy, the security policy you are coming up with applied. So to whom does this particular policy apply? You can also specify the audience that are actually not covered by the policy, the audience that are out of the scope. You can have an example of maybe some staff in a business unit that are in charge of managing the security separately. Maybe they are not going to be part of the audience of the policy. They're not going to be um, that policy is not going to apply to them. The third thing to consider is the information security objectives. So you need to make sure that your management team agrees on a well-defined objective for the strategy and the security of the information system. So information security focuses on three main objectives, and these three main objectives are forming what we call the security triangle. And the first objective is confidentiality, the second one is integrity, and the third one is availability. Confidentiality simply means that data and information can only be accessed by the individuals that are authorized. Okay, so that means the information and data is confidential. It can only be accessed by people who have authority or who are authorized to access. The second is integrity, and integrity simply means that the data is going to be intact, the data is going to be accurate, the data is going to be complete, and we have the IT systems that are going to be kept operational over time. So you're going to be you're going to have intact data, you're going to have accurate data, and you're going to have data that is complete. In other words, there are no changes that are going to be made in that data or that information. Someone has a mic on, switch that mic off. Switch that mic off. So making sure that we have data that is intact, we have data that is accurate, and we have data that is complete. There are no changes that can, there are no pieces of data that can be deleted there. And we also have the information technology systems that are going to be kept operational always. The third one is availability. And when we talk about availability, we are talking about having users accessing the information systems or the information or the system anytime they need to access. Anytime they need to access, they should be able to access the information system anytime they need to access. These three factors are forming the security triangle, and they're actually forming the information security, confidentiality, integrity, availability. Number 4, you need to look at the authority and access control policy. You look at what we call the hierarchical pattern. By hierarchical pattern means that the people at the senior level positions, they have the authority to make some decisions on what data is going to be shared with who. They decide what data can be shared with who. So you might have a security policy that have different terms, maybe for some senior managers and also the junior employees. And it is actually good to make sure that the policy is going to give or to state or to outline the level of authority over the data and over the system for each role that is in that organization. The second one is the network security policy, where only the users are able to access the company networks and servers through some unique logins that are authenticated. And these logins can include things like passwords, things like biometrics, things like ID cards, things like tokens. So it's important to make sure that the system is monitored and all the login attempts are recorded. The fifth one is data classification. So the policy should make sure that it puts data into categories that can be, for example, can have a category called top secret. Then we have secret, we have confidential, then we have public. What is the objective of classifying data? The objective of classifying data is, one, to make sure that we have the sensitive data is not going to be accessed by individuals that are actually at lower clearance levels. And number 2, we are going to protect data that is highly important and to avoid some the need of security measures for unimportant data. Number 6 is the data support and operations. So we need to look at the data protection regulations. When we are dealing with systems that are storing personal data or data that is expensive, these systems are supposed to be protected, and the protection is supposed to be according to the standards of the organizations. Of course, the standards of the organizations, the industry best practices, then also the industry compliance standards, and some other regulations that are relevant. So there are majority or most of the security standards will require that there is at a minimum there is encryption, there is a firewall, and there is a an anti-malware protection. Then there's data backup also. Make sure that data is encrypted according to the industry practices. Data is securely stored in a backup media, or maybe even to secure cloud to prevent data loss. Number three, there's the movement of data. And when you talk about movement of data, we are focusing on the transfer of data. The transfer of data should be happening through some secure protocols. We are making sure that any information that is copied to some portable devices or is transmitted via a public network is encrypted. Number seven, we have security awareness and behavior. So you need to have security policies with your staff, shared with your staff. Have some training sessions to just keep the employees informed of the various security procedures and the various mechanisms that you have put in place. This would include informing them about the data protection measures, informing them about the access protection measures, informing them about the data sensitivity or sensitive data classification. So when you talk about security awareness and behavior, we are looking things like one, social engineering. When you talk about social engineering, we are talking about placing some special emphasis on some the dangers of the social engineering attacks that can actually happen. For example, phishing emails. So you make the employees responsible for actually noticing and preventing attacks and also reporting attacks. The second thing under security awareness and behavior is a clean desk policy. And in clean desk policy, we are just making sure laptops are secured with a cable lock. Yeah, our computers are secured with a cable. In other words, they are locked. They cannot be moved. Then if there are documents that are shared, um, uh, uh, or the documents that are no longer needed, then you make sure you are actually deleting them. You clean printers so that you have documents that are not going to fall in the wrong hands. You need to accept also internet usage policy by making sure you are defining how the internet should be restricted. For example, you might you might allow YouTube and other social media websites, but then you block the access to other websites using a proxy. Number eight, we look at the responsibilities, the rights, and the duties of the personnel. So you need to appoint a staff that is going to carry the user access reviews. It's going to do the education of user access, the change management, the incident management, how the implementation is done, the periodic updates of the security policies, and the policy should actually state the responsibilities clearly and they should be part of the security policies. Now, let's look at the best practices for drafting information security policies. The best practices for drafting information security policies. The first one is information and data classification. That is best practice. I've talked about this. So when you classify information and data, you break the classification of information and data can actually break your security program. If we have poor information, we have poor data classification, then your system might be left open to attacks. Also, if you have inefficient or management of resources that is not sufficient, it might bring some overhead expenses. So if you have a clear classification policy, it is going to help the organization to have control of the distribution of their security assets. Number two is the IT operations and administration. So you should make sure that the IT operations and administration are working together to actually achieve compliance and the security requirements. If there's no cooperation between departments, then that is going to lead to things like configuration errors. So teams that are going to work together, they are going to actually coordinate in assessing risks. They are going to identify risks in all the departments, and that is going to reduce risks from happening. Number three is security incident response plan. When you have a security incident response plan, it is going to help you to actually have an appropriate remediation action during a security incidents. When a security incident has occurred, you have a remediation action that is already defined. So a security incident strategy is going to provide a guideline that is going to include things like the initial threat response, the priority that needs to be identified, and also the appropriate fixes that are going to be carried out in that security incident. Then we have SaaS and cloud policy that is going to provide the organization with the clear cloud and SaaS adoption guidelines that are going to provide the foundation for a unified cloud ecosystem. So it's a policy that can help in mitigating the ineffective complications and poor use of cloud resources. Number five, we have acceptable use policies, AUPs, that are going to help us to prevent data breaches that can occur through the misuse of the resources of the company. So when you have transparent, acceptable user policies are going to keep all the people we have in our company, employees or all the personnel, in line with the proper use of the technology of the resources of the company's technology. Number six, we have identity and access management, that is IAM regulations, and we have to allow the IT administrators to authorize the systems and also applications to the individuals, and let employees know how to use and create passwords in a way that is secure. Okay, because when we have a password policy, it can identify and also reduce risks. Number seven, we have the data security policy that is going to outline the various technical operations of the organization and also the standards that are acceptable in accordance with the payment card industry data security standards, which is PCI DSS compliance. Number eight, we have privacy regulations. So we are talking about the government enforced regulations, for example, General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, that actually protect the privacy of the end users of the data. Now we have organizations that don't protect the privacy of their users and they are risking in losing their authority and may be also fined. Number nine, we have personal and mobile devices. So we have most organizations that are moving to cloud companies, to cloud. We have companies that are encouraging employees to actually access the softwares for the company from any location. Now, this is actually risking because it is introducing vulnerability through the personal device, such as the laptops and the smartphones. So when you have a policy that is actually controlling the proper security of personal devices, it is going to help us to prevent the exposure to threats via employee-owned assets. And the last thing that we are going to look at briefly in this unit is the legal obligations of information systems professions. So you might be asking yourself questions like, is it okay to read campus users' email? What if you believe that university policies are being violated? Would you tell the users that their email is being read? Is it okay to look through files on a user's laptop when you are troubleshooting a problem? Maybe you are the IT technician. What if the user is someone you think might be storing illegal content on the laptop? So if these questions can cause you to stop and think about what you would do, then it means you're not alone. We have ethical choices often that okay, we need to understand that we are living in a human society. So we are subject to the society is subject to less than complete information. We have societal pressures, we have multiple interpretations of facts, and also we need to apply some professional judgment that is going to be guided by our our experience, also by us making sure that we are relying on laws, policies, and cultures. There's other more complex situations. For example, you are the system administrator with a broad access to enterprise system. Then your supervisor has asked you to begin maybe archiving all of the emails and web activities logs of one of your coworkers. So typical request of this nature can be initiated through maybe a formal communication from your work legal office. So you feel that this request is inappropriate and possibly at odds with standard work procedure and processes. So you're going to raise concerns with your supervisor, but you are told that this is a sensitive matter and details cannot be shared with you. So after thinking more about the conversation you had with the supervisor, you are under the impression that you might lose your job if you persist in discussing the matter further, or if you refuse to carry out the task. Then the question is, what would you do? So you have allegations that are being made against an individual on a workplace. You believe the allegations could be disproved uh, through maybe an analysis of data to which you have access, but you would have to explore the data to prove it. You don't believe that this information would otherwise be discovered or disclosed. What are you going to do? Those are various scenarios that are looking into the legal obligations of information systems and professionals. So it's important to have a realization of all these things. So to do that, we need to look at the sources of ethical guidance for IT professional. What is the ethical? What do we get ethical guidance from? So there are codes of assets that IT professional needs to commit to, or codes of conduct that IT professionals needs to commit to, which include: one, integrity, competence, there is professional responsibilities, there is work responsibilities, there is societal responsibilities. Okay, we also have some common commitments between the three codes that are actually supposed to: one, maintain technical competence; number two, avoid injury to others, avoid injury to their property, avoid injury to their reputation or to their employment; reject bribes, kickbacks, etc., etc., etc. These are obligations that we need to actually settle down for.